Let's continue with a sporting theme. Louise Ransom joins us. Louise, tell us about this new concussion study.
Yeah, well, I'm going to tell you a little bit, but then a professor from New Zealand is going to tell us everything we need to know. Concussion is obviously a huge issue in sport, and the University of Canterbury in New Zealand is undertaking a new study to find out just how effective the use of headgear is in contact sport. Professor Nick Draper joins us live now from Christchurch. Good morning to you, Nick. What makes this different to previous concussion studies?
So I think previous research has tended to focus on measuring concussion and impacts, and also on sort of real-time assessment of concussion. And our research starts from my personal interest in the fact that I've got three sons that love the game of rugby and they play. And I wondered about whether there was a potential of headgear to offer some safety for children. And so we started our research from that perspective.
And with rugby specifically, obviously in New Zealand, that's the main football code. Do you imagine this sort of study could have an impact on other contact sports?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. The thing with rugby is that the headgear that the players are allowed to wear has to be soft-shelled, so it has to be something that wouldn't make an impact on somebody else's head and hurt them. So any sort of contact collision sport where there's the potential, there are collisions that are possible, and they would only be allowed to wear soft-shelled headgear, then that would make really good sense in terms of our type of headgear.
Yeah, we've seen players like Jonathan Thurston in the NRL wear that type of headgear. Also, a couple of AFL players choose to wear it as well.
Yes.
In this particular study, what other protective equipment is involved? What are you looking into?
So the headgear is the main piece of equipment, and countries like Japan have gone to mandated headgear for all children. So we're really investigating headgear and its potential to offer mitigation from sort of impact forces. But we're also working with an Australian company, Hit IQ, who have some instrumented mouthguards, and those will help us to understand the collisions. And when there's a contact to collision point, we'll be able to measure the forces that are evident at that time point.
So why is this particular type of research so important? You mentioned your young sons. I know there'd be a lot of parents at home that talk about what sort of sports they might put their kids into. Why is it important to do this sort of study?
Well, I think there's research evidence amassing in terms of the effects of concussion from collisions and particularly contact sports. And those sort of research findings have shown that there are sort of potential risks there. However, sports like rugby, New Zealand's just obviously gone out of lockdown, and so rugby's been able to start here. And I was down at the local rugby club where I coached one of the teams yesterday. And there's 200 kids playing sport and being involved in the sort of culture around having fun with your friends, playing footy, and then morning tea afterwards and all that sort of thing. There's some really great values in rugby. And if we can look at a way that might make that safer for children, then I think that's a really positive thing. The research shows, in terms of children, that the potential of impacts on affecting their brain are more significant than even for adults. So the research with juniors is probably really important and overdue.
So take us through how the study is actually working and what are you sort of going through?
Sure. So we're working on a number of aspects to it. So we're working with Hit IQ, the Australian company, and looking at validation of the mouthguard technology in their latest mouthguard model that they've put together. So that's one aspect. We've also got this key study which will actually start in 2021 because of the COVID situation. And in that study, we will measure with MRIs. We'll look at and measure and observe with cognitive testing as well, children's cognitive function as they start a season, and we'll measure them through the season. And then we'll get them to use our headgear, which we've developed, and we're just in the process now of prototype testing the latest headgear. And we will get them to wear that, and then we'll go back to the lab. If in an event of a collision, we'll backtrack in the lab and recreate that collision and have a look at the potential mitigation or reduction of forces that was brought about through wearing the headgear. So those are sort of two key aspects. And the other part we're looking at, the headgear we've got at the moment is designed around reducing linear forces.
Nick Draper, I'm so sorry. We're just running out of time. It's so interesting and really important research you're doing. Thanks for your time here on Weekend Breakfast.